would have a face-to-face interaction with the speaker himself or herself. Then you can also raise the question from the audience. Does that sound good? Yep. Awesome, great. Now, let me announce our first speaker. He currently lives in Tartu, and he works at the Institute of Economics in the University of Tartu. He does the research on the international business, and his research revolves around the psychology and entrepreneurship, which is connected with international business. He is a businessman with 20 years of experience, so please accompany him with a round of applause. Henrik Arvidsson.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm really glad that so many people came here. I was actually first approached by one of my students who asked me, would you like to participate in this? And this is something I've never done before. It's quite a different format from teaching at university or doing research. And I thought, should I do it? And I felt this mental battle because sometimes we humans are creatures of habit. And I said, yeah, I can do it actually. It's quite interesting. So I said yes. It was a bit stressful to prepare because last week I was in Ukraine and that was quite an interesting journey. It's a country quite close to Estonia, so close but still so far away, I would say. So, first of all, we have the questions. What are attitudes? A gentleman named Alford in 1935 defined it as a mental state, a neural state of readiness organized through experience, exerting a directive or dynamic influence upon an individual's response to all objects and situations in which it's related. And we have attitudes, not only to people, but also to events, objects. I think most of us, we have attitudes that are quite strong. If I say, and weak as well, if I say the word blue, you will probably not react so much. But if I say the word immigration, I think a lot of you would probably have a stronger opinion. And if I say the word murder or genocide, I think most of us react quite strong because most of us actually have an attitude or an idea that this is something really wrong. Attitudes are either positive, different variation, or negative, and sometimes we can also be neutral. And they also vary quite a lot in magnitude. So like I said, an attitude towards something lame, like the color blue, is quite weak, and an attitude towards something upsetting, like genocide, is usually quite strong. And often emotions, I would say most of the time, are connected to some sort of emotion. They provoke an emotional response. So can anyone say something that really gets to you? Something that you have a really strong attitude about?
Feminism.
Feminism? For or against? Stupid question. Yeah, for, of course. Anyone else?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump. For or against?
Against.
Against, okay. I guess you're liberal, yeah? Okay. And attitude is actually something that makes our lives easier, because without them, I think we would all find it quite difficult to navigate through life, because we all the time have to make decisions, what we like, what we don't like, and attitude is actually something that makes it easier, because it's something preset. So you don't have to evaluate the situation as it occurs, because you have already some mental programming that tells you how to feel before. If you take a look at the history of research into attitudes, I would say in the 1920s, this field of research was still quite young. We had a gentleman named Thurstone in 1928 who first realized that we can actually measure attitudes. Like some attitudes are strong, others are weak. And once he made that connection, research into attitudes was actually usable, not just for businesses, but also for governments. Can you guess in what way, for example, do governments try to influence us? Yeah. Yeah.
By media manipulation, education.
Yeah.
Also what's happening in the parliaments themselves. It's not directly related to media, or the way that politics are conducted, but also just another form of manipulation.
Yeah, of course. And then we also have businesses. When you walk on the streets, for example, you see the sign McDonald's. You see, I don't know, EKRE, the political party, the Social Democrats. You see a variety of actors who all the time try to influence us. They try to change the way we view the world and also the way we view them. This is actually called branding. This is something that big businesses has done for a very long time. During the Second World War, research changed because everything was about how can we control the soldiers? How can we make our war effort more effective? It was about power, conformity. Conformity is to try to make everyone think and act in the same way. This is something that is really important, for example, if you look at the military, but also something in society. I would say that in your social group or in your class, conformity is quite strong. How do you think like an Estonian? I come from Sweden, for example. In Sweden, the last 10 years, it has been unacceptable to criticize immigration. It has been difficult to say that high taxes is something bad for society. And if you go against this notion, you will be sanctioned. It can be that people unfriend you on Facebook. It can also be that you lose your job, people stop saying hello to you. So these are actually markers of conformity. And you also have group dynamics, persuasion. How can we bend others to our will? And this was all for Clinton. In the 50s and 60s, I would say to the mid-80s, it was all about social cognition, theory of reason action, that every action can be explained. We don't just do things for the sake of us, for the sake of it, sorry. We actually act according to our attitudes. Researchers that work on attitudes, they usually talk about the three virtues. If you look at attitudes, there are three different components. First is the content of an attitude, the structure, and its function. When we look at the content, we have first cognitions, what we actually believe in. It is, for example, if we read something in the newspapers, our friends tell us something, that affects the way we think and feel about an object. It is a mental process. And then we have the effects, the feelings. They are not always rational. They can sometimes be confused. They can override the knowledge. Like if I have a very strong feeling towards something, it can actually be more important. So if I feel that university sucks, it's really boring to go to those lectures. Oh my God, it's terrible. But in reality, I know that going to those boring lectures is actually something good for me. First, I get the diploma. I might get a better job. But still I don't go because I have a negative emotion associated to go to lectures. So feelings are really powerful. And then the third is behavior, what we actually do. I would say that the behavior aspect is the outcome of the first two. What we know, what we feel affects our behavior. Do you have any idea of a situation where you actually knew something was wrong, you have a diverging feeling, and it affected your behavior?
So you mean we acted opposite to?
Yeah,
Okay.
to what we actually know. Like for example, I know that it's really bad to steal. Still, I do it.
It's probably the peer pressure thing.
Yeah.
maybe?
It can be.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be. And then we have the structure. We have first the unidimensional view. It means that something is either good or bad. So it's quite easy. For example, if you have one of those questionnaires, you get, how do I like Norwegians? And you get 0, that's really bad, and 10, that's really good. This is the unidimensional view. The bidimensional view reflects varying amounts of favorability towards an object. It can be both positive and negative. And the function of attitude is actually to make life easier, so we don't have to take new decisions all the time. And it's also good for our survival. We know, for example, that snakes are dangerous, so we have a negative attitude towards snakes. We know that pizza is really tasty, so we have a positive attitude. So it makes life easier. When it comes to attitude and the process of information, I would say that sometimes attitudes, when we read a newspaper, for example, we read about Israel and Palestine. We interpret things according to our own attitudes. So it means that two people can read the same article, but they can take away totally different things. We have I will only share one perspective, is the theory of reasoned action. I see that I have a limited time left. It actually goes out that attitudes and norms. You all know what norms are?
Yes, but like, I think norm is something deeply rooted than attitude.
Yeah. And they actually yeah. And they actually correlate, because there's an interaction. There's quite a lot of diverging theories about this. But norms and attitudes, for example, if you have a group where the norm is that we like to pay taxes, we really like it, then we have a positive attitude toward tax. But if many of the group members have a negative feeling, it means that the norms are changing, the intentions as well, and then the behavior, we might stop paying taxes. So, yes. How can we then change people's attitudes? One way is mere exposure. It means that if we are subjected to something, we see something every day, eventually we actually start liking it. Have you ever thought about those commercials? Like, they are really annoying. You see this commercial about detergent, about Coke, all the time. They actually try to capitalize on this. They made an experiment in 1992, two gentlemen named Moreland and Beach. They had 4 students. They attended class. They didn't say anything at all. They just went to class, was bachelor level. One of them, she didn't go so often. The second one went a bit more. The third one more, and the last one, she came to class every day. And then the lecturer asked, who do you like the most and who do you like the least? And it turned out the person who attended the least classes was the least liked person. And the person who attended the most was the more liked person. Even if they they actually didn't even interact with anyone. So they could have no idea about these persons at all. Then we have operant and classical conditioning. If we take a look at classical conditioning, is to associate something with something else. Have you all heard about Pavlov's dogs? Yeah. Can you tell me what is it about? Anyone can tell about this experiment? Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, this experiment was every time when Professor Pavlov gave those some food.
Yeah.
Lamp was turned on, and then when he turned on the lamp without giving food, dogs already had a reflex.
Yeah, they learn to associate. And then we have operant conditioning. It means that you add a reward or punishment, and then you sort of make the behavior more or less likely. We can also learn by observation, like children, they often do as their mother or father do. So it can, I think it happens to all of us. If you have a member of your class, for example, or at work, who does something really good and they get rewarded, chances are that you will also imitate their behavior. You will also imitate, you will absorb attitudes. We also have emotional learning. It is to tag an object to something else. Like in the commercial, you see Coca-Cola, and everyone is smiling. They are really happy. So then you tag Coca-Cola and happy people. Sometimes things go wrong. Like, for example, I have a friend who voted for Donald Trump. I think you mentioned it. At first, she was really happy. This guy is so good. And then it was scandal after scandal. And she said, I don't really like this guy. But if you have a collision between attitude and action, it's actually easier to change the attitude. So now she says, I like the guy. Because you need to defend your actions. It's something we do every day. We don't think about it. And here we have, I think more time. I would say everyone has attitudes. Sometimes they are good, but sometimes they are limiting us. We have, for example, prejudice, racism, genocide. Those are the negative things. This is what attitudes actually can do. We have a negative attitude about immigrants, Jews, Muslims, and they can actually affect our behavior. So, I'm out of time. So, thank you very much for listening, and I hope you have a pleasant evening. Okay, do you have any questions? Yeah.
Anyone got any questions? They would love to address from the audience. No? Okay, we got 2 questions on Slido.
Yeah.
So the first question is, so the burger is named Donald Trump. Is this done to manipulate a person's attitude?
Can you repeat it?
So if the cheeseburger
Yeah.
is named Donald Trump, is this done to manipulate a person's attitude?
I think it can be, for example, because if you really like Donald Trump, and if you tag Donald Trump with burger, it can actually be so that people who like Donald Trump, they will buy this burger because their attitude becomes more positive towards the burger. But it can also have the reverse effect, like people who really hate Trump. I don't think they will buy the burger.
Right. Yeah, okay. So the next question is, what could be the example of bi-dimensional view?
If you look, for example, the question, do you like Norwegians? If you have a bi-dimensional view, you don't have just 1 to 10, positive or negative, but you also reverse it. You can have varying degrees of attitudes connected to an object. I like Norwegians, but sometimes they do this and that I don't like. So I would say it makes it, when you make research, I think the bi-dimensional actually describe things better, but it's actually more difficult to measure. So I think that's the main thing.
Well,
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Can you give another round of applause? Just want to urge you again to ask questions. Don't be shy. Don't hesitate. Make sure that you post. There are no bad questions or good questions here. So if you feel like you need the answer for a certain component of the speech, make sure just to post them on Slido or ask them directly to the speaker. Now, our next speaker, she's the student at the Science and Technology faculty in the University of Tartu. And she studies her bachelor program, and she's the member of the Estonian iGEM team. So coming up is 15 minutes on synthetic biology and her iGEM project. Please welcome Irina Borovko.
Hello, everybody. I would like to share with all of you my biggest passion, which is synthetic biology, so you can know a little bit more about it. So I would like to start with a question. Who do you think run the world?
Me.
Good answer. Me? But actually, I personally would like to believe that Beyonce is correct and girls run the world, or at least that the answer is some of us humans, like you, for example. But I think that the truth is more likely to be microorganisms. They're sort of the gray eminence in our world, and they manipulate our world more than we can imagine. For example, do you think you are a single organism? If the answer is yes, you might think again, because actually we are considered being holobians, so to say a mixture of different species. For example, human microbiota consists of very diverse organisms like bacteria, archaea, fungi, protists, and viruses.